Welcome on in, everyone. It's Malliem back with another weekly horror story. If you've got a story you'd like to share, feel free to post it to my subreddit linked below. Today's story is called Murder is Legal in My Small Town, but I am yet to kill someone. And it's like if the purge took over an entire town, and you never know when it's coming for you. Leave a comment if you want me to continue this series. If you enjoy the show, consider subscribing. Thanks. Murder was legal in our town. I grew up seeing it. At 8 years old, I watched a man walk into our local cafe while I drank my peanut butter chocolate milkshake and killed 2 people dead. There was no malice in his eyes, no hatred. He was just a normal guy who smiled at the waitress and winked at me. Mom told me to keep drinking my milkshake, and I did, licking away the excess whipped cream while the bodies were carried out and the pooling red was cleaned from the floor. I could still see the flecks of white in the red, and my stomach twisted. But I didn't feel scared. I had no reason to be. Nobody was screaming or crying. The man who had shot them sat down to eat a burger and fries, not blinking an eye. That was my first experience seeing death. With no rules forbidding murder, you would think a town would tear itself apart. That is not what happened. Murder was legal, yes, but it didn't happen every day. It happened when people had the urge. Mom explained it to me when I was old enough to understand. The urge was a phenomenon that had been affecting the townspeople long before I was born, and there was no real way to stop it. So it didn't stop. Mom told me she had killed her first person at the age of 17. Her math teacher. There was no reason or motive. Mom said she just woke up one day and wanted to kill him. That specific killing became more of a bedtime story to lull me to sleep. I didn't like her smile when she told me about her killing. Sometimes I got scared she was going to murder me, too. Growing up, I was constantly on edge. Every day I woke up and pressed my hand to my forehead, asking myself the same question. Did I want to kill anyone? Those thoughts blossomed into paranoia when I wasn't sure what I was feeling. It's not like I didn't know what it was like. Dad taught me how to use a knife and how to properly hold a weapon, and Mom gave me lessons in severing body parts. Both of them wanted me to follow through with the urge when it inevitably hit me. I wanted to fit in. When I started middle school, our neighbors were caught killing and cannibalizing their children, turning them into bone broth. I knew both of the kids, Clay and Clara. I played with them in their yard and ate cookies with them. Clara told me she wanted to be a nurse when she grew up, and Clay used to tug on my pigtails to get my attention. They were like siblings to me. No matter what my parents said or my teachers, my gut still twisted at the thought of my neighbors doing something like that. Days after the cops arrived, I saw Mrs. Jensen watering her plants. But when I looked closer, there was no water. She was just holding an empty hose over her prize roses. I stood on my tiptoes, peering over our fence. Mrs. Jensen? I'm okay, Elle. Her voice didn't sound okay. Are you sure? I asked. I pointed at the hose grasped in her hand. You forgot to turn your water on. I know. Mrs. Jensen. I took a deep breath before I could stop myself. Did you like killing Clay and Clara? Why, yes, she hummed. Of course I did. I nodded. But didn't you love them? She didn't reply for a moment before seemingly snapping out of it and turning to me with a bright smile. Too many teeth. That was the first time I started to question the urge. It was supposed to make you feel good, acting like a relief, a weight lifted from your chest. Killing another human being was exactly what the people in our town needed. But what about killing their families and children? Did it really make them feel good? Looking at my neighbor, I couldn't see the joy my mom described. In fact, I couldn't see anything. Her expression was the kind of blank that scared me. It was oblivion, staring back, stripped of real human emotion. Mrs. Jensen's smile stretched across her lips, like she could sense my discomfort. I noticed she had yet to clean her hands. Mrs. Jensen's fingernails were still stained a scary shade of red. Instead of replying, the woman moved toward my fence in slow, stumbling strides. She was dragging herself, like moving caused her pain, agony I couldn't understand. It was exactly what my mother had insisted didn't exist when killing. Pain. Humanity. All the adults told us we would not feel those things when killing. We wouldn't feel regret or contempt. We would just feel good. It was a release, like cold water coming over us. We would never feel better in our lives than when we were killing, and our first would be something special. But Mrs. Jensen's fingers, still slick with her children's blood, wrapped around the wooden fence. I found myself paralyzed. Her manic grin twisted and contorted into a silent wail, and once vacant eyes popped open like she was seeing me for the very first time. "I want to go home," she whispered, squeezing the wooden fence until her own fingers were bleeding. "Can you tell them to let me go home? I would like to see my children. Right now. Do you hear me?" Mrs. Jensen wasn't looking at me. Instead, her gaze was glued to thin air. She was crying, screaming at something only she could see. And for a moment, I wondered if ghosts were real. I twisted around to see if there were any ghosts, specifically the ones of her children. But there was nothing. Just fall leaves spiraling in the air in pretty waves. "Mrs. Jensen is sick," Mom told me once I was sitting at the dinner table, eating melted ice cream. It tasted like barf running down my throat. I didn't see Mrs. Jensen after that. Well, I did. She looked different, however. Not freakishly different, though I did notice her hair color had changed. I remembered it being a deep shade of brown, and when my neighbor returned with an even wider smile, it was more of a blondish white. When I questioned this, Mom told me it was a makeover. The urge affected people in different ways, and with Mrs. Jensen, after having her come down, she had decided on a change. Mom's words were supposed to be reassuring, adding that there was no reason to be scared of the urge. But I didn't want to be like Mrs. Jensen and have a mental breakdown over my killing. I wanted to be like Mom and have a glass of wine and laugh over the sensation of taking a life. Mrs. Jensen was my first real glimpse into the negativity of killing. Dying, for example, wasn't feared. From a young age, we'd been taught that it was a vital part of life, and dying meant finding peace. When I first started high school, I expected killing to happen. Puberty was when the urge fully blossomed. Weapons were allowed, but only outside of classes. In other words, under no circumstances must we kill each other in class, but hallways were a free-for-all. I saw attempts during my freshman year, but no real killing. Annalise Duval was infamously known as the junior girl who rejected the urge and was thrown out of school. Struck with a stomach flu on the day of her attempted killing, I only knew the story from word of mouth. Apparently, the girl had attempted to kill her mother at home, failed, and then bounded into school, screaming about laughter in the walls and people whispering in her head. Obviously, my classmate was labeled insane, and judging from her nosebleed, this girl's body had ultimately rejected the urge, and her brain was going haywire. Nosebleeds were a common side effect. I heard stories from kids saying there was blood everywhere, all over her hands and face, smeared under her chin. She had been screaming for help, but nobody dared go near her, like rejection was contagious. Annalise survived. Just. I still saw her on my daily bike ride to school. She was always sitting cross-legged in front of the forest with her eyes closed, like she was praying. The rumor was, after being thrown out by her parents, the girl wandered around aimlessly, muttering about whispering people and laughter in her head. It was obvious her rejection had seriously affected her mental state, but I did feel sorry for her. On my 14th birthday, I confused a swimming stomach and cramps for the urge, which turned out to be my first period. I remember biking my way home, witnessing a man cut off another guy's head with an axe. It's funny. I thought I would be desensitized to seeing human remains. I saw the passion in the man's face as he swung the axe, digging in real hard, chopping right through bone and not stopping, even when the intense red splattered his face and clothes. He didn't stop until the head hit the ground, and that sent my stomach creeping into my throat. Then it was the vacancy in his eyes, the twitching smile as he held the axe like a prize. Part of me wanted to stay, to see if he had a similar reaction to Mrs. Jensen. I wanted to know if he regretted what he had done, but once I met his gaze, and his grin widened, the toe of his boot kicking the guy's motionless body, I turned away and pedaled faster, my eyes starting to water. It was long before my lunch was inching its way up my throat, and I was abandoning my bike on the side of the road, choking up undigested mac and cheese onto the steaming tarmac. I didn't tell Mom about the man, and, more importantly, about my odd reaction to his killing. I wasn't supposed to feel sick to my stomach. Murder was normal. I wasn't going to get in trouble for it, so why did seeing it make me sick? I had been taught as a little kid that visceral reactions were normal, and it was okay to be scared of killing and murder. However, what our brains told us was right wasn't always the truth. Our teacher held up a teddy bear and stabbed into its stuffing with a carving knife. We all cried out until the teacher told us that the bear didn't care about dying. In fact, it was ready to find peace, and it didn't hurt him. In other words, we had to ignore what our minds told us was bad. Mom told me I would definitely start having conflicting feelings before my first killing, but that it was nothing to worry about. I did worry, though. I started to wonder if I was going to become the next Annalise Duval. Maybe the two of us would become friends, sharing our delusions together. My 17th birthday came and went, and still no sign of the urge. I noticed Mom was starting to grow impatient. She had a routine of coming to check my temperature every morning, regardless of whether I felt sick or not. "How are you feeling?" I couldn't help but notice Mom's smile was fake. She dumped my breakfast on a tray in front of me, and when I risked nibbling on a slice of toast, she dropped the bombshell. "Elle, you are almost 18 years old," she said. I noticed her hands were clenched into fists. "Do you feel anything?" I considered lying, though then I would have to kill someone, and without the urge, I was pretty sure I wouldn't be able to do that. I don't know, I answered honestly, propping myself up on my elbows. Most of the kids in my class, she cut me off with a frustrated hiss. Yes, I know. They have all killed someone, and you haven't. Her eyes narrowed. People are starting to notice, Elle. She spoke through a smile that was definitely a grimace. And when people start to notice, they get suspicious. I've been on the phone with 3 different doctors this morning, and all 3 of them want to book you in for an MRI. Just to make sure things are normal. MRI? I almost choked on the apple I had been chewing. Yes, Mom sighed. We can't ignore that things aren't abnormal. You are 17 years old and haven't had one urge to kill. The minimum for your age is 1 kill, she said. Minimum, Elle. You haven't killed anyone, and when I bring it up, you change the subject. I changed the subject because she started asking if I wanted to practice. I wasn't sure what practice meant, but from the slightly manic look in her eye, my mom wasn't talking about dolls or teddy bears. It was normal to practice killing. There were even people who volunteered to be targets at the local scrapyard. Most of them were old people. Joey Cunningham started training to kill when he was 12 years old. 5 years on, Joey had accumulated a total of 14 kills. He never failed to remind everyone in almost every class. I could taste the apple growing sour in the back of my mouth. Mom was just trying to help, and it's not like I was doing this intentionally. The idea of going to the scrapyard and killing people, even if they gave me permission to, wasn't appealing in the slightest. I'm okay, I said. When Mom's eyes darkened, I followed that up with, I have some spare time after class, so... I meant to finish with maybe, but the word tangled in my mouth when I took a chunk out of the apple, and pain struck. Throbbing pain, which was enough to send my brain spinning off its axis. For a moment, my vision feathered, and I was left blinking at my mother, who had become more silhouette than real person. I was aware of the apple dropping out of my hand, but I couldn't think straight. The pain came in waves, exploding in my mouth. When I was sure I could move without my head spinning, I slammed my hand over my mouth instinctively to nurse the pain, except that just made it worse. Fuck! Had I chipped my tooth? Blinking through blurry vision, I knew my mom was there. But so was something else. As if my reality was splintering open, another seeping through, I suddenly had no idea where I was, and a familiar feeling of fear started to creep its way up my spine. Thing was, though, I knew exactly where I was. I'd known this town, this house, my whole life. So that feeling of fear didn't make sense. The more I mulled the thought over in my mind, however, pain striking like lightning bolts, something was blossoming. It both didn't make sense, and yet, it also did. In the deep crevices of my mind, that feeling was familiar. And I had felt it before. No matter how hard I squinted, though, I couldn't make it out. When I squinted again, a sudden shriek of noise rattled my skull. It took me a disorienting moment to realize what I could hear was laughter. Hysterical laughter, which seemed to grow louder and louder, encompassing my thoughts until it was deafening. Not just that, the walls were swimming, flashing in and out of existence, before seemingly stabilizing themselves. I blinked. Was I losing my mind? Oh, maybe this was a side effect of rejecting the urge. Elle? Mom's voice cut through the phantom laughter, which faded, and I blinked rapidly. Sweetie, are you okay? Yeah. The word was in my mouth before the thought could cross my mind. I shook my head, swallowing. Yeah. I'm fine. She nodded, though her expression darkened, scrutinizing. I knew she couldn't wait to get me under an MRI. All right, finish your breakfast. School starts in an hour. Mom stopped at the threshold. I really do think practicing killing will help a lot. She left, and I rolled my eyes, mimicking her. I flinched when another wave of laughter slammed into my ears. Faded, but very much there. Definitely not a figment of my imagination. Checking in my bedroom mirror, I didn't have a loose tooth. Even thinking that, though, panic started to curl in the root of my gut. My brain wouldn't shut up on my way to school. My gut was twisting and turning, trying to projectile that meager slice of toast. Annalise Duval had complained of a loose tooth before she rejected the urge. Was that what was going to happen to me? Was it all because of that stupid apple? At school, I was surprised to be cornered by a classmate I had said maybe 5 words to in our combined time at Briarwood High. Jonas Isaacs was one of the first kids in my class to be hit with the urge, and he almost ended up like Annalise Duval. I don't even think it was the urge. I think he was driven to kill through emotions, like so many adults had tried to tell us weren't real. Jonas was a confusing case, where a teenager had actually blossomed early, or not at all, and struck with his own intent. Jonas didn't need the urge. Halfway through math class, 2 years prior, I was daydreaming about the rain. It rarely rained in Brightwood. Every day was picturesque. But I did remember rain. I knew what it felt like hitting my face, dropping into my open mouth and filling my cupped hands. I remembered the sensation on it soaking my clothes and gluing my hair to the back of my neck. When I asked Mom if it was ever going to rain, though, she got a funny look on her face. Sweetie, it doesn't rain in Brightwood. It never rained. So, where had I jumped into puddles? My gaze was fixed on the window pane, trying to imagine what a raindrop looked like sliding down the glass, when Jonas Isaacs let out an exaggerated sigh behind me. In front of him, Jessa Pollux had been tapping her pen on her desk. At first, it wasn't annoying, but then she kept doing it. Tap, tap, tappity tap. And then it became annoying. I could tell it was annoying because Jonas politely asked her 3 times to stop making noise. Jessa, stop, he groaned, half asleep in his arms. When she continued, his tone hardened. Can you stop doing that? She ignored him, and if anything, tapped louder. I had grown up knowing that the urge came without warning, motive, or reason. It happened whether you liked it or not. Jonas was different. His case was rare. This time he did have a motive, and despite what we were taught, that killing didn't require a reason and wasn't driven by negative emotion. Jonas was driven by anger. This time, I saw it happen clearly. When I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, I twisted around with the rest of the class to see Jonas halfway off his chair, his fingers wrapped around a knife. He was already smiling, already thrilled with the idea of killing. The urge had hit him. Until that moment, He was a quiet kid who kept to himself. Jessa knew instantly what he was going to do, even without turning around. Like an animal, Jonas already had a tight hold of her ponytail and yanked her back. Though in fight or flight, the girl was screaming and flailing. She didn't want to die, I thought. Was that normal? Mom always insisted that if it was our time, it was our time. If someone attacked us, even family members, we were to accept it. I caught the moment her elbow knocked into Jonas's mouth, just as he drove the blade into her skull. Until then, Jonas had been consumed by a euphoric frenzy, intoxicated by the dark thrill of killing. It was as if the idea of ending a life had briefly elevated him to a state of pure euphoria. Growing up, Mom's story spoke of finding a twisted pleasure in murder. And for a moment, seeing that look in my classmates' eyes, I understood why she described killing like a rush. It was a lunacy I didn't understand, complete unbridled insanity sending shivers down my spine. This was exactly what Mom was talking about. She described it like floating on a cloud, lukewarm water pooling underneath her feet. But just as abruptly as it had enveloped him, that otherworldly glow faded from Jonas's eyes. He crumpled to his knees, one hand clamped over his mouth, the knife slipping from his grasp. "That's enough," our teacher announced. "Jonas, go clean yourself up." When he didn't respond, she snapped at him. "Mr. Isaacs!" Then he did, his gaze flicking to his blood-slicked hands. Huh? He seemed like he was on another planet, swaying back and forth. There was a moment when I met his half-witted gaze, and he slowly inclined his head, like he was confused, scared. When Jonas lifted his head, I saw thick beads of red trickling down his chin, pooling down his fingers. It was the same look I had seen on Mrs. Jensen's face. Jonas blinked again before noticing the blood. "Fuck!" he whimpered, his voice muffled. His eyes, filled with panic, flickered wildly. Without another word, he scrambled to his feet, stumbling toward the classroom door. When I asked him what happened the next day, he explained it was just an abnormal reaction, and that he was fine. But Jonas's words were strange. He wasn't even looking at me, and his smile was far too big. He got his first kill, though, so that gave him bragging rights as the first sophomore to come of age. Jonas Isaacs and Annalise Duval both had similar experiences. One of them had clearly lost their mind, while the other seemingly avoided it. And speaking of Jonas, it wasn't the norm for him to be talking to me at school. But there he was, blocking my way into the classroom. "Hey." He quickly sidestepped in front of me when I tried pushing him out of the way. There had been a time the year before when I considered asking him to prom. He was a reasonably attractive guy, with reddish dark hair that curled slightly as it peeked out from under a well-worn baseball cap, a crooked smile that was never genuine, always leaning more toward irony. But then I remembered what he did to Jessa. I remembered the sound of his knife slicing through skin, cartilage, and bone, and despite her cries, her animalistic wails for him to stop, he kept going, driving it further and further into her skull. I couldn't look him in the eye after that. Jonas inclined his head. "Can we talk?" No. My mouth was still sore, and I was questioning my sanity, so speaking to Jonas wasn't really on my to-do list that morning. Jonas didn't move, sticking an arm out so I couldn't get past him. "Do you have a toothache by any chance?" To emphasize his words, he stuck his finger in his mouth, dragging his index finger across his upper incisors. "Like a bad toothache." His voice was muffled by his finger. Jonas leaned forward, arching a brow. "You do, don't you? Right now you feel like your whole mouth is on fire, and yet you can't detect any wobblies." The guy's words sent a sliver of ice tingling down my spine. He was right. I hadn't felt right since biting into that apple. When I didn't say anything, his lip twitched into a scowl. All right, you don't want to talk. He raised 2 fingers in a salute. Suit yourself. What do you mean? I asked, mostly to humor him. He shrugged. Maybe wait a few days and then come talk to me. All right? Jonas's words didn't really hit me until several days later. I woke up with a throbbing mouth, knelt over the corpse of my mother. The urge had finally come. It was something I had been anticipating and fearing my whole life, terrified I wouldn't get it and would end up ostracized by my loved ones. But when I saw my mom's body and the vague memory of plunging a kitchen knife into her chest hit me, I didn't feel happy or relieved. I felt like I had done something bad, which was the wrong way to think. Killing was good, the words echoed in my mind. Killing was our way of release. How could I think that when there was a knife clutched between my fingers? The weapon that had killed her. Hurt her. How was this supposed to make me feel good? My mother's eyes were closed, peaceful, like she had accepted her death. The teeth of the blade dripped deep, dark red, and I knew I should have felt something, joy or happiness. Except all I felt was empty and numb, and fucking wrong. Alone. I felt despair in its purest form, which began to chew me up from the inside as I lulled from my foggy thoughts. I wasn't supposed to scream. I wasn't supposed to cry, but my eyes were stinging and I felt like I was being suffocated. I saw flashes in quick succession, a room bumbling with moving silhouettes and the smell of coffee. Mom never let me try coffee, and I was sure we never had it in the house. So how did I know the feeling of it running down my throat? Just like in my bedroom, the walls started to swim. This time I jumped to my feet and leaped over my mom's corpse, slamming my hands into them. They were real. Almost as if on cue. There it was again. Laughing. Loud shrieks of hysterical laughter thrumming in time with a dull pain pounding in my back tooth. Blinking through an intense fog choking my mind, my first coherent thought was that, yes, Jonas was right. I did have a loose tooth, and when I was sure of that, I was stuffing my bloody fingers inside my mouth, trying to find it. I grabbed the knife feverishly, my first thought to cut it out, when there was a sudden knock at the front door. Slipping barefoot on the blood pooling across our kitchen floor, I struggled to get to the door without throwing up my insides. Annalise Duval was standing on my doorstep. I had seen her in odd assortments of clothes, but this one was definitely eye-catching. The girl was wearing a wedding dress that hung off her, the veil barely clinging to the mess of bedraggled curls she never brushed. Blinking at me through straggly blonde hair, she almost resembled an angel. The dress itself was filthy, blood and dirt smeared down the corset, the skin torn up. "Hello, Elle." The girl lifted her hand in a wave. Her smile wasn't crazed like my classmates had described. Instead, it was sad. Annalise's gaze found my hands slick with my mother's blood, but barely seemed fazed. "Do you want to see the wall people?" Until then, I'd ignored her ramblings. But when I started hearing the laughing, wall people didn't sound so crazy after all. I nodded. "Can you hear the laughing?" I asked. "Sometimes," Sometimes. She twirled in the dress. That's how it started for me. Laughing. I heard a lot of laughing. And then I found the wall people. I winced when she came close, so close, almost suffocating me. Nobody believes me, and it's sad. I'm just trying to tell people about the wall people, but they label me as crazy. They say something went wrong with my head. Annalise stuck 2 fingers to her temple and pulled the imaginary trigger, her eyes rolling back, like she was mimicking her own death. I'm not the one who's wrong. I know about the wall people and the laughing. I know why I murdered my mom. Annalise, I said calmly. Can you tell me what you mean? Her eyes were partially vacant, that one sliver of coherence quickly fading away. Instead of speaking, I took her arm gently and pulled her down my driveway. Can you show me what you found? Annalise danced ahead of me, tripping in her wedding dress. She cocked her head. Did you kill your mother too? Her lips twitched. That's funny. According to the wall people, you're not supposed to kill someone until the end of seasonal 3. The girl blinked, giggling, and I forced myself to run after her. Wow, she was fast, even in a wedding dress. Annalise leapt across the sidewalk, twisting and twirling around, like she was in her own world. Before she landed in front of me, her expression almost looked sane. I wonder which season it will be. Will it be summer? Maybe fall or winter? I guess it's not up to you, is it? It's up to the urge. Laughing again, the girl grabbed my hand, her fingernails biting into my skin. I glimpsed a single drop of red run from her nose, which she quickly wiped with the sleeve of her dress, leaving a scarlet smear. Let's go see the wall people, Elle, she hummed. As her footsteps grew more stumbled, blood ran down her chin, spotting the sidewalk. I don't know if coherency ever truly hit Annalise Duval, but knowing she was bleeding, her steps grew quicker, more frenzied. I quickened my own pace. Your nose, was all I could say. Annalise nodded with a sad smile. I know, she said. Don't worry, it will stop when I shut up. Her smile widened. But what if I don't shut up? What if I show you the wall people? To my surprise, she leapt forward and flung out her arms, tipping her head back and yelling at the sky. What if I don't shut up? Annalise laughed. What are the wall people going to do, huh? Are you going to explode my brain? When people started to come out of their homes to see what was going on, I dragged her into a run. Are you insane? I hissed. Maybe. Annalise seemed to be floating between awareness and whatever the fuck the urge had done to her. Don't worry. They're just peeking. What? The girl had an attention span of a rock. Her gaze went to the sky. They're going to turn the sun off so I can't show you. Her words meant nothing to me until the clouds started to darken. Just like Annalise had predicted, the sky began to get dark. Knowing that somehow the supposedly crazy girl knew when things were going to happen only quickened my steps into a run. Hey! Halfway down the street, Jonas Isaacs was riding his bike toward us, which I found odd. Jonas didn't own a bike. He rode the bus to school. Elle! Waving at me with one hand and grasping at the handlebars with the other, Jonas pedaled faster. Yo, do you want to hang out? Peeking, Annalise said under her breath. Ignoring Jonas, I nodded at Annalise to keep going, though the boy didn't give up. We twisted around, and he caught up easily, skidding on the edge of the sidewalk. When he came to an abrupt stop in front of us, his gaze flicked to Annalise. He raised a brow. Shouldn't you be praying in the forest? The girl recoiled like a cat, hissing, "Peeking!" Jonas shot me a look. Of all the people you could have made friends with, you chose Annalise Duval. His eyes softened when I ignored him and pulled the girl further down the road. Jonas followed slowly on his bike. Where are you going anyway? Isn't it late? It was 4 p.m. I decided to humor him. We're going to see the wall people. You're kidding. Do I sound like I'm kidding? I turned my attention to him. You asked me if I had a toothache, right? His expression crumpled. I did. I noticed Annalise was clingier with him around, sticking to my side. Every time he moved, she flinched, tightening her grip on my arm. The girl was leading us into the forest, and I swore the closer we got to the clearing, the more townspeople were popping up out of nowhere. An old woman greeted us, followed by a man with a dog, and then a group of kids from school. Annalise entangled her fingers in mine, pulling me through the clearing. Jonas followed hesitantly, biking over rough ground. Once again, I think this is a bad idea, he said in a sing-song voice. We should go back. When it was too dangerous for his bike, he abandoned it and joined my side. Elle, the girl is insane, Jonas hissed. What are you even doing? What is this going to accomplish except potentially getting lost? I want to know if she's telling the truth, I murmured back. He scoffed. Telling the truth? Look at this place. He spread his arms, gesturing to the rapidly darkening forest. There's nothing here. No. Annalise ran ahead, staggering over the tricky ground. No. It's right over here. She was still fighting a nosebleed, and her words were starting to slur. The girl twisted to Jonas. You're peeking, she spat, striding over to him until they were face to face. Stop peeking, she said, her fingers delving under her wedding skirt, where she pulled out a knife and pressed it to his throat. If you peek again, I will cut you open. Jonas nodded. Got it, Blondie. No peeking. Annalise didn't move for a second, her hands holding the knife, trembling. You're not going to tell me I'm crazy again, she whispered. You're not crazy, Jonas said dryly. Say it again. You're not crazy, he yelped when she applied pressure to the blade. Can you stop swinging that around? Jeez. Annalise shot me a grin, and it took a second for me to realize. Jonas was scared of the knife. He was scared of dying, which meant, whether he liked it or not, the boy had, in fact, not gone through with the urge. I thought the girl was going to slash Jonas's throat open in delight, but instead, she looped her arm in his like they were suddenly best friends. Come on, Elle! She danced forward, pulling the boy with her. We're close! I wasn't sure about that. What we were, however, was lost. When the three of us came to a stop, it was pitch black, and I was struggling to see in front of me. Annalise, however, walked straight over to the thin air and gestured to it with a grin. Ta-da! Spluttering through pooling red, she let out a laugh. See? Jonas, who was still uncomfortably pressed to her no matter how hard he strained to get away, shot me a look I could barely make out. I'm sorry, what did I say? That we were going to get lost? That Annalise is certifiably crazy and is probably going to kill us. At first, I thought I really was crazy. Maybe Annalise's condition was contagious. I could hear it again, laughing. But this time, it was coming from exactly where Annalise was pointing. When the girl slammed her hand into thin air, there was a loud clanging noise that sounded like metal. Slowly, I made my way toward it, and when my hands touched sleek metal, and what felt like the corners of a door, more pain struck my upper incisors. Holy shit. Jonas was pressing himself against the door, and slamming his fist into it. The crazy bitch was right. His words hung in my thoughts on a constant cycle as we delved into what should have been forest. After all, we had been standing in the middle of nowhere. The laughter was deafening when I stepped over the threshold, and I had to slap my hands over my ears to block it out. Through the invisible door, however, was exactly what Annalise had described. Wall people. All around us were television screens, and on those screens were people. Faces. They were not part of the laughter. The laughter was mechanical and wrong, rooted inside my skull. The faces that stared down at us were men and women, some teens, and even younger children. Annalise and Jonas were next to me, their heads tipped back, gazes glued to the screens. Not the ones I was looking at. The ones on tiny computer monitors. When I finally tore my eyes from our audience, I began to see what made Jonas stiffen up next to me. One screen in particular showed his face. He was younger, maybe a year or two. No, I thought, something slimy creeping up my throat. It was from when he had killed that girl. His hands, clasped in his lap, were still stained and slick with Jessa Pollix's blood. The Jonas on the screen was far more relaxed, casually leaning back with his feet propped up on the table. His hair was shorter, and his clothes were more formal from what I was used to seeing him in. I usually saw him in jeans and hoodies, but this Jonas wore a crisp, white-collared shirt. Something hung around his neck, a thin strip of black fabric with a shiny card at the end, reminding me of some kind of badge.
Why, exactly, have you signed up for this program?
A man's voice crackled off screen.
Duh.
Jonas held up his scarlet hands, a grin twisting on his lips. His arrogant smile twisted my gut.
So I can get my darkroom rep back.
He leaned forward, his eyes narrowed.
That is going to happen, right? I don't do this shit for free, and I've got 1 million followers to impress, man. Darkroom loves me.
Jonas scoffed, crossing one arm over the other.
Even if I did go too far that one time, which wasn't even my fault. What are you guys, fucking Twitch? You are correct,
the man said.
Darkroom does benefit from its influencers. Our program aims to help satisfy certain needs by broadcasting them right here.
He paused.
You've killed 5 people before signing up for Darkroom, correct? Your parents? Parents and brother.
Jonas's lips pricked into a smile.
I gutted them just to see what was inside, but of course my TikTok got taken down by all the freaks in the comments trying to cancel me.
He rolled his eyes.
They worship you, call you a god, swear they'll do anything for you, and then fuck you.
I flinched when he leaned forward, his gaze penetrating the camera. This guy knew exactly how to act in front of one. The slight incline of his head, trying to get the best angle.
Can I tell you something? Yes, of course, young man. Have you ever been called a god? Because it's a rush.
He laughed.
I made stupid videos and these people worshipped me. They loved me.
Jonas clucked his tongue.
But the moment I show them my real self, they turn on me and try to end my career.
He leaned back in his chair with a sigh, glancing at the camera.
And then I found you guys, who pay me to be my real, authentic self. Now, how could I decline an offer like that? And?
The man cleared his throat.
You will keep killing? We are aware the initial implant impacted your brain quite badly. In the subdued state, you will keep killing, as the so-called urge says. However, in reality, we will be sending signals to your brain which will make you commit murder. Alright, I'll do it. Are you sure? You couldn't help noticing during your first kill you seemed to, well, react in a way we haven't seen before. It's possible there could be a potential fault.
He cocked his head, like a puppet cut from strings.
Did the comments like it? Well, yes. Good.
Jonas held out his arm.
Do it again. And do it right this time. As long as I'm getting 40K every appearance, I'm good. You can slice my brain up all you want. I'm getting paid and followers, so...
His gaze found the camera.
What are you waiting for?
When the screen went black, then flickered to a bird's eye view, and finally a close-up of my house, I felt my legs give way. As if on impulse, I prodded at my mouth and felt for the loose tooth. That... Jonas spoke up, his voice a breathy whisper. His eyes were still glued to the screen, confusion crumpling his expression. That wasn't me. Well, it was me, but I don't remember that. To my surprise, he turned to me, and I saw real fear in his eyes. Elle, he gritted out. That is not me. Instead of answering him, I turned away when alarm bells started ringing, and the room was suddenly awash in flashing red light. Peeking! Annalise squeaked, hiding behind me. Ignoring her, I focused on Jonas. Or whoever the hell he was. I slammed the door shut, throwing myself against it. You need to knock my tooth out, I told him. Now.